Welcome to Hercule Mysteries, where we delve into the timeless tales of intrigue and deduction inspired by the Queen of Crime herself, Agatha Christie. I'm Elias Thorne, your host with a warm British lilt, ready to guide you through a relaxing journey of mystery. Settle in with a cup of tea, dim the lights, and let the story unfold at a slow, deliberate pace. Today, we present Poisoned Letters to Lady Fairchild, a Hercule Poirot death story. This is a long-form narration, perfect for unwinding. Over 90 minutes of sophisticated storytelling. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Is it a cozy armchair in London, or perhaps a rainy evening in New York? Now, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1. Introduction and Setup. In the gentle undulations of the English countryside, where the landscape seemed eternally painted in shades of emerald and gold, stood Fairchild Manor, a bastion of elegance and enigma that had weathered the storms of centuries. It was the autumn of 1925, a season when the leaves clung desperately to their branches before surrendering to the inevitable chill, and the air was laced with the earthy scent of harvest and impending frost. The manor itself, with its imposing Georgian facade, tall sash windows framed by creeping ivy, and chimneys that pierced the sky like silent sentinels, had been the ancestral seat of the Fairchild family for generations. But in recent years, it had become synonymous with one formidable figure, Lady Arabella Fairchild. Lady Fairchild, now in her mid-60s, was a woman whose presence commanded attention as effortlessly as a general on the battlefield. Her hair, a cascade of silver waves pinned into an elaborate chignon, framed a face etched with the lines of authority and experience. Her eyes, a piercing blue that could freeze a soul or warm it with rare approval, missed not a single detail in her domain. She dressed in gowns of exquisite silk and velvet, imported from the ateliers of Paris, their colours deep and regal, crimson reds and midnight blues that accentuated her stately figure. Widowed for over 2 decades since the untimely death of Lord Reginald Fairchild in a hunting accident abroad, she had inherited not just his vast fortune from colonial enterprises in India and Africa, but also his unyielding sense of propriety and control. The manor buzzed, whose expectations were as high as the manor's vaulted ceilings, and whose memory for slights was infallible. The household was a mosaic of lives intertwined by duty, blood, and hidden agendas. Foremost among them was her nephew, Reginald Fairchild Jr., Reggie, as he was known to his club companions in London. A man in his early 30s, with the dashing good looks of a matinee idol, wavy dark hair, a neatly trimmed moustache, and eyes that sparkled with mischief. He cut a figure of youthful exuberance. Reggie resided at the manor intermittently, between jaunts to the city where he indulged in the thrills of high-stakes poker and the company of glamorous actresses. His inheritance prospects were the talk of the county, but so were his mounting debts. Whispers in the servants' quarters suggested he had been siphoning funds from the estate's accounts, forging Lady Fairchild's signature on cheques to cover his losses at the roulette tables. More than once, the drawing-room had echoed with her furious rebukes. "You squander our legacy, Reginald. Mark my words, you'll rue the day you took me for a fool." Reggie's motive, if one pondered darkly, was as clear as the crystal decanters in the library: to hasten his aunt's demise and claim the fortune before his creditors closed in. Then there was Miss Evelyn Hargrove, Lady Fairchild's devoted secretary and companion, a woman whose unassuming appearance belied a depth of quiet endurance. In her mid-40s, Evelyn wore her mousy brown hair in a sensible bun, her spectacles perpetually slipping down her nose, and her dresses in muted greys and browns that blended her into the woodwork. She had entered service 15 years prior, fresh from a secretarial school in Manchester, and had since become indispensable, managing correspondence, organising events, and even tending to Lady Fairchild's personal needs during bouts of ill health. Yet, the relationship was far from equitable. Lady Fairchild's sharp criticisms were a daily ritual. "Evelyn, your handwriting is abysmal. Do it again." Or, "Must you hover like a shadow? Fetch my shawl and be quick about it." Evelyn's own life was one of quiet desperation. Her elderly mother resided in a modest cottage nearby, plagued by rheumatism that required expensive treatments. Evelyn's salary, meagre despite her loyalty, barely sufficed. In private moments, she dreamed of independence, perhaps a small inheritance to start anew. Was resentment and shadow lingered from a decade past. Lady Fairchild, in a fit of paranoia, had accused him of pilfering silverware, summoning the local constable and subjecting him to humiliating searches. Though proven innocent, a maid's confession cleared him. The incident had scarred his pride. "I served king and country," he once muttered to a fellow servant, only to be treated like a common thief. His loyalty now was a polished veneer, masking a grudge that festered like an untreated wound. Blackwell's access to the manor's every nook made him a figure of quiet power and potential peril. Dr. Lionel Prescott, the family physician from the nearby village of Ashford-on-Thames, was a frequent visitor, his portly frame and jovial demeanour belying a life of professional pressures. In his late 50s, with a round face framed by spectacles and a beard streaked with grey, he exuded the warmth of a country doctor, his laugh booming like thunder during house calls. He treated Lady Fairchild for her array of ailments, gout, insomnia, the occasional heart flutter, with potions and pills from his leather bag. But rumours, whispered in the village pub, painted a darker picture. During Lord Fairchild's final illness, Prescott's treatment had allegedly hastened his end. A misdiagnosis, or perhaps a deliberate oversight. Lady Fairchild, privy to this secret, held it over him like a Damocles sword, threatening exposure if he ever crossed her. "Your reputation hangs by a thread, Doctor," she had once sneered. Prescott's motive? To silence the one person who could ruin his practice and send him to obscurity, or worse. Out in the expansive gardens, where rose bushes bloomed defiantly against the autumn chill, and gravel paths wound like veins through the greenery, laboured Mr. Silas Green, the head gardener. A rugged man in his 40s, with sun-browned skin, calloused hands that spoke of endless toil, and a quiet, brooding gaze, Green had tended the estate for 20 years. His world was one of soil and seasons, but it harboured a personal storm. A brief, passionate affair with Lady Fairchild in the years following her husband's death. What began in the seclusion of the greenhouse had ended abruptly when she dismissed him, citing his low station. The scandal had cost him his marriage, disputes over fox hunts, social precedents at balls, and most recently, a bitter lawsuit over a parcel of land along the riverbank. Lady Fairchild had won, her lawyers dismantling Langford's claims with ruthless efficiency. "You'll pay for this humiliation," Langford had vowed at the courthouse steps. Her visits to the manor, ostensibly for tea and truce, were laced with barbs. Motive? Revenge, pure and simple, sweetened by the prospect of annexing the disputed land. It was against this backdrop of tangled loyalties and veiled hostilities that the anonymous letters began to infiltrate the manor's serenity. The first arrived on a misty Monday morning in early September, slipped into the ornate brass mailbox by the unwitting postman. Lady Fairchild, seated in her study, a sanctum of polished mahogany desks, leather-bound tomes on shelves that reached the ceiling, and a Persian rug underfoot, opened it with her pearl-handled letter opener. The room, always locked from within during her private hours, offered solitude amid heavy oak doors and barred windows that admitted only slivers of light. The letter, typed on unremarkable foolscap paper, bore no signature, only words that chilled like the draught from the chimney. "Your sins will catch up to you, Lady Fairchild. The poison of your past will consume you." She crumpled it, dismissing it as the work of a disgruntled villager or a prankster. But the letters persisted, arriving every few days, each more insidious than the last. One hinted at Reggie's embezzlement. The heir's hands are sticky with stolen gold. Another alluded to Prescott's secret. The doctor's cure was a killer. Secrets only intimates could know, or so it seemed. Lady Fairchild confided sparingly, her pride preventing full disclosure. She heightened her vigilance, bolting the study door even during daylight hours and scrutinising her post with gloved hands. The household sensed the shift. Evelyn noticed her employer's pallor, Reggie his aunt's shortened temper, Blackwell the extra locks on cabinets. Whispers spread like ivy, entwining the manor's inhabitants in a web of suspicion. Little did they know, this was merely the prelude to a symphony of death, one that would summon the meticulous mind of Hercule Poirot, the Belgian detective whose little grey cells unravelled the impossible. As the leaves fell outside, so too would the veils of deception within Fairchild Manor. Manor's stone walls. It was a day that promised the quiet routines of country life. Breakfast in the morning room, perhaps a stroll through the gardens. But fate had scripted a far more dramatic tableau. Young Elsie, the housemaid, A sprightly girl of 19 with freckles dusting her cheeks and auburn curls escaping from beneath her cap, began her duties as always. She rose before dawn in the servants' quarters, a cramped but cosy attic space shared with the cook and scullery maid, where the air was thick with the scent of lavender sachets and starched linens. By 7 o'clock, she had polished the silver in the pantry under Blackwell's watchful eye and prepared Lady Fairchild's breakfast tray, a delicate china teapot steaming with Earl Grey, 2 slices of buttered toast with marmalade, and a soft-boiled egg in its silver cup. Balancing the tray carefully, Elsie ascended the grand staircase, her footsteps muffled by the thick Persian runner that wound up the oak steps like a river of intricate patterns. Arriving at Lady Fairchild's bedroom door, a heavy panel of carved mahogany adorned with brass fittings, she knocked softly, 3 times, as protocol demanded. "Good morning, milady," she called in her soft, lilting voice, tinged with the local dialect. No response came. Elsie frowned, her brow furrowing slightly. It was unusual. Lady Fairchild was an early riser, often already dressed and demanding her correspondence by 8. Shrugging it off, perhaps her mistress had indulged in a rare lie-in, Elsie proceeded down the corridor to the study, where she was tasked with lighting the fire to ward off the morning chill. The study door loomed at the end of the hall, its polished surface reflecting the flickering light of a nearby sconce. Elsie tried the handle, but it resisted, locked, as it had been increasingly often since the arrival of those wretched letters. "Milady?" she called again, pressing her ear to the wood. Silence, broken only by the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer. A prickle of unease crept up Elsie's spine, like the chill draught seeping under the door. She hesitated, then hurried back downstairs to summon help. Mr. Blackwell was in the butler's pantry, meticulously arranging the crystal glasses for luncheon, his gloved hands moving with the precision of a clockmaker. "Sir," Elsie gasped out, office adjacent to the study, her spectacles askew and a ledger clutched to her chest like a shield. "Is something amiss?" she queried, her voice thin with worry. Blackwell rapped on the door with his knuckles, the sound sharp and insistent. "Lady Fairchild? Are you well?" Silence. He tried the handle again, confirming the bolt was thrown from within. "We must force it," he declared, his military training kicking in. Silas Green, who had been summoned from the gardens where he was pruning the hedgerows, his overalls dusted with soil and leaves, joined them, his strong frame ideal for the task. Together, Blackwell and Green shouldered the door, the wood groaning in protest until, with a splintering crack that reverberated through the hall, the lock gave way. The study revealed itself in a rush of stale air, heavy with the scent of old books and lingering pipe tobacco from Lord Fairchild's era. Sunlight streamed through the barred windows, casting barred shadows across the room like prison bars. The grand desk dominated the centre, cluttered with stacks of correspondence, an inkwell, and a magnifying glass, and there, slumped forward over the blotter, was Lady Arabella Fairchild, her silver hair disarrayed, her face hidden against the papers. Her right hand clutched the latest anonymous letter, its edges crumpled in her lifeless grip. A collective gasp escaped the group. Elsie dropped her tray with a crash, tea spilling across the threshold like blood. Reggie staggered forward, his face draining of colour. "Aunt Arabella!" he exclaimed, reaching out but hesitating to touch her. Evelyn covered her mouth with her handkerchief, tears welling behind her spectacles. Blackwell, ever the professional, stepped in first, gently lifting Lady Fairchild's head. Her eyes stared blankly, her lips tinged an unnatural blue, and a faint, bitter almond scent hung in the air, a telltale sign that sent a shiver through those who recognized it. "She's gone," Blackwell announced gravely, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a flicker of something unreadable. Relief? Regret? He straightened, composing himself. "We must summon the doctor at once." Dr. Lionel Prescott arrived within the half-hour, pedalling furious, barely wide enough for a child, and showed no signs of disturbance. No soot displaced, no footprints. It was an impossible crime. A locked room, impenetrable, yet death had found its way in, On the desk lay the incriminating letter, its typed words glaring in the morning light. "This is your final warning. The poison is in your veins now." Lady Fairchild's fingers bore faint smudges, as if from handling the paper, but the sheet itself appeared ordinary. No visible residue, no punctures. Nearby sat her teacup from the previous evening, empty but with a residue that Prescott eyed suspiciously. Could be in the tea, or perhaps the letter was treated, he mused aloud. Word spread swiftly through the manor. The cook, Mrs. Hargreaves, no relation to Evelyn, clucked in the kitchen, crossing herself. Silas Green lingered in the hall, his cap twisted in his hands, his eyes darting as if expecting accusation. Lady Victoria Langford arrived unannounced, ostensibly for a scheduled meeting about the land dispute, her chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce crunching gravel outside. Informed at the door, she entered with feigned shock, her elegant features composing into a mask of sympathy, though a subtle gleam in her eyes suggested otherwise. "How dreadful," she purred, glancing at the study. "Poor Arabella. Who could have done such a thing?" Reggie paced the drawing-room, lighting cigarette after cigarette, his mind racing to alibis and inheritances. Evelyn busied herself with pointless tasks, rearranging papers while tears streaked her face. Blackwell directed the staff with clipped orders, maintaining order amid chaos. The local constable, Inspector Hargreaves, a portly man in his 40s with a walrus moustache and the uniform that strained at the buttons, arrived by midday, summoned by a frantic telegram. Out of his depth in matters beyond poaching or pub brawls, he surveyed the scene with wide eyes. "Locked room, eh? Blimey." He sealed the study with tape, took rudimentary statements. Reggie claimed a late night in the village, alibied by the innkeeper. Evelyn had retired early. Blackwell was in his quarters. Prescott had left after an evening checkup. Green was in his cottage, Langford at home. All plausible, yet none airtight. "This is a puzzle for the ages," Hargreaves admitted, mopping his brow. "We'll need Scotland." Captain Hastings to join if needed, and boarded the evening train to Ashford-on-Thames. As dusk fell over Fairchild Manor, casting long shadows across the grounds, Poirot alighted at the station, a diminutive figure amid the steam. A carriage awaited, whisking him to the estate where death hung like a pall. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the unravelling of secrets was about to begin. Chapter 3. Investigation begins. As the evening shadows lengthened over Fairchild Manor on that fateful October day in 1925, the arrival of Hercule Poirot brought a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sense of impending revelation amid the lingering pall of death. The little Belgian detective alighted from the carriage with the precision of a man who viewed the world as a meticulously arranged puzzle, each piece waiting to be fitted by his unparalleled intellect. Dressed in an immaculate black suit, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the muddy drive, and his famous moustache waxed to symmetrical perfection, Poirot surveyed the manor with eyes that sparkled like polished onyx. "Mon ami," he greeted Inspector Hargreaves, who awaited him at the entrance with a mixture of awe and desperation. "You have summoned Poirot to unravel the impossible. Eh bien? Let us see what the grey cells can achieve." Inspector Hargreaves, mopping his brow with a handkerchief despite the cooling air, led Poirot inside, his boots clumping heavily on the marble foyer floor. The manor seemed to hold its breath. The grandfather clock ticked solemnly, marking time as if aware of the scrutiny about to descend. "It's a right stumper, Monsieur Poirot," Hargreaves confided in his gruff tones. "Lady Fairchild, poisoned in her locked study. No entry, no exit, and that dratted letter on her desk. Cyanide, the doc says, but how it got to her, well, that's why you're here." Poirot nodded sagely, his head tilting like a bird eyeing a worm. "The method, Inspector, is but the how. We must delve into the why, the motives that burn in the hearts of men and women. Introduce me to the household, if you please." They proceeded to the drawing-room, a spacious chamber adorned with velvet drapes in deep burgundy, crystal chandeliers that caught the gaslight in rainbow prisms, and portraits of stern Fairchild ancestors gazing down disapprovingly. Chocolate. "I am Hercule Poirot, and I have come to bring light to this darkness. A tragedy has occurred, an impossible crime, or so it appears, but Poirot, he does not believe in the impossible, only in that which has not yet been explained by logic and observation." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, his eyes darting from face to face, noting the flickers of fear, defiance, and curiosity. The investigation commenced forthwith in the sealed study, now illuminated by additional lamps to banish the encroaching dusk. Poirot circled the room like a predator, his small stature belying his commanding aura. The desk remained as it had been found, papers scattered, the fatal letter prominent, Lady Fairchild's body removed to the morgue, but her presence lingering in the faint scent of her lavender perfume, mingled with the acrid hint of cyanide. "Observe," Poirot instructed Hargreaves, pointing with his silver-headed cane. "The door, bolted from within, the lock intact, no signs of tampering. The windows latched securely, bars undisturbed. The chimney, too narrow even for a cat burglar, and no soot displaced on the hearth." He knelt, examining the floorboards for secret panels, but found none. An enigma, indeed. Turning to the desk, Poirot donned white gloves from his pocket, always prepared, and lifted the letter gingerly. The typed words stared back. "This is your final warning. The poison is in your veins now." No fingerprints, as Hargreaves had reported, save Lady Fairchild's own, but Poirot's magnifying glass revealed subtle anomalies. A faint residue on the envelope's flap, perhaps from adhesive or something more sinister. The poison was on the letter, no? But how applied without detection, and who posted it? He requested samples of the household's typewriters. There were 3, one in Evelyn's office, one in the library, and a portable in Reggie's room. "We shall compare the fonts, the ribbons, the machine. It betrays its user." With the crime scene documented, Poirot returned to the drawing room for interviews, seating himself in Lady Fairchild's favoured armchair, a subtle psychological ploy. He began with Reggie Fairchild, who shifted uncomfortably under the detective's gaze. "Monsieur Reginald," spectacles, her hands fluttering like trapped birds. "Miss Hargrove," Poirot intoned gently. "You were close to Lady Fairchild, her confidant, her scribe. Yet she treated you harshly, no? The salary, insufficient for your mother's care." Evelyn's eyes widened. "How did you know? Oh, it's true. She could be cruel, belittling me before guests. But murder? I typed only her legitimate correspondence. Those anonymous horrors, I'd never." Poirot probed further. She admitted revising the will recently, reducing Reggie's portion at Lady Fairchild's insistence. She said he was unworthy. A motive emerged. Perhaps Evelyn sought a larger bequest for herself, or revenge for years of indignities. Blackwell, the butler, was interviewed by the fireside, his back straight as a ramrod. "Monsieur Blackwell, your service is exemplary, but the past, the false accusation of theft, it leaves a scar, eh?" Blackwell's jaw tightened. "It does, sir. I was humiliated, my honour questioned. But I remained loyal. I was in the kitchens preparing breakfast when she died. No opportunity." His military background suggested discipline, but also the skill to orchestrate a precise crime. Poirot inquired about the post. Blackwell often collected the mail. "Did you notice anything unusual?" A slight hesitation. Perhaps a clue. Dr. Prescott followed, his jovial facade cracking under scrutiny. "Doctor, you had access to poisons. Cyanide, perhaps for medical use." Prescott mopped his forehead. "Only in trace amounts, for compounds. And the old rumour about Lord Fairchild. Lady Fairchild held it over me like a noose." He confessed to arguments during house calls, but insisted they were about her refusal to follow treatments. "I left at 9 last evening. She was alive, locking herself in." Yet, his trembling hands betrayed nerves. Poirot suspected hidden debts or dependencies linking him to others. Silas Green, uncomfortable indoors, fidgeted with his cap. "Monsieur Green, the gardens are your realm. Poisons for pests, easy to procure. And the affair, discarded like a weed." Green's face reddened. "That was years ago." Vial of cyanide in the greenhouse. Too obvious. A plant? Alibis interwove. Reggie borrowed from Prescott. Evelyn overheard Blackwell's threats. The letters knew intimate secrets from Lady Fairchild's diaries, hidden but perhaps rifled. Poirot summoned Hargreaves. We must test the letter for poison residue. Send to the chemist in London. As the inspector departed, a creak in the corridor. Someone eavesdropping? The web tightened, motives clashing like storm clouds. The investigation had begun in earnest, and Poirot's grey cells hummed with anticipation. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The second day of Hercule Poirot's investigation at Fairchild Manor dawned with a persistent drizzle that pattered against the leaded windows like impatient fingers, mirroring the mounting tension within the estate's walls. The year was still 1925, but time seemed suspended in the aftermath of Lady Fairchild's death, each hour stretching as suspects navigated their daily routines under the watchful eye of the law, and the even keener gaze of the Belgian detective. Poirot, having risen early, savoured a tisane in the morning room, a cosy space filled with chintz armchairs and shelves of leather-bound novels, where the scent of damp earth from the gardens mingled with the aroma of fresh scones prepared by the unflappable cook. "Ah, the English weather," he murmured to Inspector Hargreaves, who joined him with a mug of strong tea. "It conspires to keep secrets hidden, but Poirot, he pierces the fog." With the household assembled once more in the drawing-room after breakfast, a meal taken in strained silence, with Reggie picking at his eggs, Evelyn sipping tea with trembling hands, and the others exchanging furtive glances, Poirot announced his plan. "Today, mes amis, we delve deeper. Not mere questions, but the hunt for clues, the threads that weave the tapestry of truth, and beware the red herrings, those deceptive fish that lead us astray." His voice, though soft, carried an authority that silenced the room, the fire crackling in the grate as if underscoring his words. Poirot began by requesting a thorough search of the premises, enlisting Hargreaves and a constable to assist. They started in the study, now familiar yet yielding new insights under closer scrutiny. Poirot knelt by the desk, his magnifying glass hovering over a treasure trove. Entries dated back years. Reggie's embezzlement detailed with dates and sums. "The boy thinks I am blind. £500 gone this month alone." Evelyn's petty thefts from the household accounts. "Miss Hargrove pilfers like a magpie, small amounts but consistent." Blackwell's wartime rumour, though false. "The butler deserts in spirit, if not in fact. His grudge festers." Prescott's malpractice. "The doctor's error killed Reginald. I hold the proof." Green's affair. "A foolish dalliance ended it before scandal erupted." Even Langford's forged deeds in the land dispute. "Victoria's claims are fabrications. My lawyers will crush her." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Who knew of these diaries? Only someone intimate could craft letters echoing these exact secrets. But the compartment showed no signs of forced entry. Lady Fairchild must have consulted them recently, perhaps leaving them vulnerable. As the search expanded, red herrings abounded. In the greenhouse, amid pots of exotic orchids and the humid scent of fertile soil, they found a small vial labelled cyanide for pest control, half empty and poorly concealed behind a stack of terracotta pots. Green, summoned to explain, blustered indignantly. "That's not mine. I use arsenic for the aphids, not cyanide. Someone's framing me, probably that uppity Langford sneaking about the grounds." His alibi for the previous morning, tending roses near the driveway, held, witnessed by the postman, but the vial's placement was too convenient, a clumsy attempt to incriminate him. Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Ah, the obvious clue is often the false one." Moving to the Manor's office where Evelyn worked, Poirot examined the typewriters. The font on her machine matched the anonymous letters precisely, slightly worn E's and T's aligning perfectly with samples. "Miss Hargrove," Poirot confronted her gently, "you have access and motive. The diaries note your resentments." Evelyn paled, her spectacles fogging slightly. "I swear, monsieur, I haven't used it for anything but Lady Fairchild's business. Anyone could have slipped in. The door doesn't lock." Indeed, the office adjoined the hallway, accessible to all. A red herring? Or damning evidence? Poirot noted a ribbon spool with fresh ink, suggesting recent use. In Reggie's guest suite, a search of his wardrobe revealed a crumpled envelope. Prescott huffed. "It's diluted. Harmless. In small doses. And I prescribed her nothing toxic." Yet a prescription ledger showed recent orders for stronger chemicals, ostensibly for patients, but unchecked. A clue linking him to the poison's source, or a red herring planted by another. Blackwell's quarters in the servants' wing yielded a military medal from the war, alongside a faded letter from Lady Fairchild apologising for the theft accusation, but crossed out, as if never sent. "Monsieur Blackwell, your grudge is documented." The butler stiffened. "I forgave, but never forgot. Still, I had no hand in this." His alibi, overseeing breakfast preparations, was corroborated by staff, but his knowledge of the manor's locks and routines made him capable of subterfuge. Lady Langford, though not resident, permitted a search of her nearby estate, arriving in her chauffeur-driven car with haughty compliance. Her study revealed maps of the disputed land, annotated with vengeful notes. "Fairchild's downfall will be sweet." A typewriter there mismatched the font, but a garden shed held pest poisons, including cyanide. "Lady Langford, your rivalry burns bright." She scoffed. "Coincidence. I garden as well. Roses don't tend themselves." Her alibi, hosting a bridge party the previous evening, was solid, with guests confirming. But a servant whispered of her late-night walks toward Fairchild Manor. As midday approached, Poirot gathered the suspects in the library, a room of towering bookshelves and leather armchairs, the rain now a steady drum on the panes. He laid out the clues on a table: the soil-smudged envelope, the vial, the matching typewriter, the diaries. See how they point in all directions. The true murderer plants these red herrings to confuse. But Poirot sees the pattern. Tensions flared. Reggie accused Green of the vial. Green blamed Langford for trespassing. Evelyn suggested Blackwell's access to keys. Prescott hinted at Reggie's debts. Blackwell eyed Prescott's bag. Langford dismissed them all as beneath her. A new clue emerged during lunch. Elsie, the maid, nervously confessed overhearing a heated argument the night before Lady Fairchild's death. Voices from the study. One male, one female. I couldn't make out words, but it was angry-like. This complicated alibis. Ruse. A missing key from Blackwell's ring suggested internal access, but it turned up in Evelyn's desk. "Framed!" she cried. By evening, as the rain eased to a mist, Poirot retired to ponder, the web of clues and deception swirling in his mind. Connections deepened. Reggie owed Prescott money, linking their motives. Evelyn had typed Langford's lawsuit papers, knowing secrets. Green supplied herbs to Prescott's remedies. Blackwell had served under Prescott's command in the war. "The circle closes," Poirot whispered. Yet, the true path through the labyrinth remained elusive, red herrings luring toward false conclusions. The investigation pressed on, the manor's secrets poised to unravel further. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The third day at Fairchild Manor unfolded under a sky heavy with leaden clouds, the persistent rain of the previous evening giving way to a blustery wind that rattled the window panes and stirred the fallen leaves into restless whirlwinds across the lawns. It was October 17th, 1925, and the estate, once a symbol of serene opulence, now felt like a pressure cooker of suspicions, where every glance exchanged between the inhabitants carried the weight of unspoken accusations. Hercule Poirot, ever the epitome of composure, began the morning in the library, surrounded by the musty scent of aged paper and the soft glow of reading lamps. He pored over the diaries once more, his little grey cells whirring like a finely tuned engine, connecting dots that others saw only as scattered stars. "Inspector Hargreaves," Poirot called, his voice cutting through the hush as the constable entered, shaking rain from his cap. "We must press on. The clues, they tantalise, but the twists, they lurk in the shadows. Summon the suspects. Today, we confront the complications." Hargreaves nodded, his moustache twitching with anticipation, and soon the drawing-room filled again. Reggie lounging defiantly, Evelyn clutching a notebook as if it were a talisman, Blackwell standing at attention, Prescott fiddling with his watch chain, Green wiping mud from his boots, and Lady Langford arriving fashionably late, her umbrella dripping onto the rug. Poirot stood before them, his hands clasped behind his back, his moustache a barometer of his intensity. "Mesdames et messieurs, the web grows tangled, the diaries reveal secrets, the vial accuses Monsieur Green. She threatened to cut me out entirely, but I left before lunch. Ask the staff." This admission rippled through the room. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You were here, I thought." Poirot nodded. "Indeed, a complication. And you, Miss Hargrove, revised the will. Did you inform Reggie?" She shook her head vehemently, but her eyes darted to Reggie, hinting at unspoken alliances. Twist. Perhaps they conspired, Evelyn forging documents for a share, Shifting focus, Poirot addressed Green. "The footprint outside the window. Yours, no? And the vial." Green growled. "The print's from my rounds and the vial's a plant. I saw Lady Langford near the greenhouse 2 nights ago, snooping." Langford's fan snapped shut. "Preposterous. I was inspecting the boundary fence. Our dispute, you know." But Poirot revealed a new clue. A torn scrap of fabric from Langford's shawl, caught on a greenhouse thorn. "Madame, your inspection ventures deep." "Why?" she faltered, admitting a clandestine meeting with Prescott to discuss buying estate land post-inheritance. "Innocent business," she insisted. But the twist linked her to the doctor, whose cyanide traces now seemed shared. Prescott blanched. "It's true, we talked investments. My practice needs funds, and with Reggie's debts to me," the room buzzed. Reggie owed Prescott? "He borrowed £200 last month," Prescott confessed under pressure. "Threatened exposure if unpaid." A motive twist. Prescott silencing Lady Fairchild to protect his leverage over Reggie, or Reggie eliminating her to erase debts via inheritance. Blackwell, silent until now, interjected. "Sir, there's more. I found this in the post this morning." He produced another letter, identical in style. The detective pokes, but justice eludes. More poison awaits. Addressed to Poirot himself. The group recoiled. The killer was still active, taunting from within. "Mon Dieu," Poirot exclaimed, examining it. No poison this time, but the font matched, postmarked locally. Complication. The murderer among them. Undeterred by investigation, as tensions peaked, a scream echoed from the kitchens. Elsie, the maid, clutching her arm. Secrets during the lawsuit. "Hush money," Langford sneered, "not murder." Blackwell and Green, old war comrades, Blackwell revealed. Green's desertion rumour stemmed from protecting him in battle. "Loyalty," Blackwell said, but Green snarled. "You used it against me to Lady Fairchild." A twist of betrayal among allies. Poirot orchestrated a reconstruction, recreating the fatal morning. Evelyn demonstrated opening mail, licking fingers habitually, as Lady Fairchild did. The adhesive, Poirot mused, laced with cyanide crystals, dissolving on contact with moisture. But who applied it? A village postman testified seeing a gloved figure mailing letters, description fitting Blackwell's build. "Impossible," Blackwell countered. "I was here." Yet, a hidden passage from butler's pantry to stables allowed quick exits, discovered behind a wine rack. Complication. Anyone knowing it could slip out undetected. Mid-afternoon, a telegram arrived from London. The chemist confirmed cyanide on the flap, but traces of digitalis, Prescott's heart medicine, in Lady Fairchild's teacup residue. 2 poisons? Hargreaves puzzled. Twist. Cyanide killed, but digitalis weakened her first, from evening tea. Who prepared it? Evelyn admitted assisting, but Blackwell served. "I added sugar," Evelyn said, "but the jar." The sugar bowl tested positive for digitalis, accessible to all. Suspicions fractured alliances. Reggie accused Prescott of dosing to hasten death for debt repayment. Prescott pointed to Green's herbs, potentially contaminated. Green blamed Langford's gifts of preserves during visits. Langford implicated Evelyn's resentment. Evelyn suggested Blackwell's grudge. Blackwell eyed Reggie's desperation. As evening fell, the wind howling like a banshee, Poirot gathered them for a revelation. Fingerprints on the diaries, not just Lady Fairchild's, but smudged ones matching. Evelyn's gloves. "You consulted them," Poirot accused. Tearfully, Evelyn broke. "I read them, to understand her cruelty, but I didn't kill." Twist. She shared excerpts with Reggie, fueling his rage, but denied poisoning. A final complication. During dinner, Langford collapsed, clutching her throat. Mounted twists coiling like vines, ensnaring all. Poirot's mind raced. Motives intertwined, alibis fluid, red herrings evolving into real threats. The truth hovered, elusive, as the storm raged outside, mirroring the chaos within Fairchild Manor. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The fourth day at Fairchild Manor broke with a tentative sun piercing the clouds, casting a pale light over the estate that did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere of suspicion and dread. It was October 18th, 1925, and the wind had died down, leaving the grounds sodden and the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Inside, the household moved like ghosts, their routines fractured by the relentless probe of Hercule Poirot's investigation. Meals were taken in silence, eyes avoiding contact, each person nursing private fears that the net was closing. Poirot himself had spent the night in contemplation, seated in his guest room with its heavy drapes drawn, a single lamp illuminating the notes scattered across his lap. His little grey cells had laboured through the labyrinth of clues, red herrings and twists, emerging at dawn with the clarity of truth. "Inspector Hargreaves," Poirot announced over a sparse breakfast of croissants and coffee, insisted upon in place of the English fry-up. "The time has come for the revelation. Gather all in the drawing room at 11 o'clock sharp. Poirot will unmask the culprit." Hargreaves, his face etched with fatigue but alight with anticipation, nodded vigorously. "Right you are, monsieur. I'll see to it." Word spread swiftly through the manor. Reggie was informed mid-shave, his razor pausing in mid-air. Evelyn overheard while sorting papers, her hands freezing. Blackwell received the summons with a curt bow. Prescott was fetched from the village on urgent business. Green trudged in from the gardens, mud-caked, and Lady Langford arrived in her motor car, her expression a mask of intrigued disdain. By 11, the drawing-room was assembled, the fire roaring in the grate to combat the chill, though the true cold stemmed from within. Poirot entered last, his steps measured, his suit impeccable, his moustache a triumphant curl. He positioned himself before the mantel. Facing the semicircle, opens an anonymous letter laced with cyanide on the adhesive flap. She moistens her finger, a habit noted in her diaries, transfers the poison, and succumbs. The room impenetrable, door locked from within, windows barred, chimney narrow. No entry, no exit. Yet death strikes. How, and by whom? Poirot twirled his cane, beginning his dissection. The letters arrived over weeks, each revealing secrets from the diaries. Reggie's embezzlement, Evelyn's thefts, Blackwell's grudge, Prescott's malpractice, Green's affair, Langford's forgeries. Only someone with access could know these. The diaries, hidden but consulted. Fingerprints? Smudged. From gloves. Evelyn's, she admitted reading them in resentment. But was it she who used them for malice? Evelyn stiffened, but Poirot continued. The typewriter. Font matches Evelyn's machine, accessible to all. Red herring? Perhaps. The soil on an envelope. Green's garden. The vial in the greenhouse, too obvious. The footprint outside the window, irrelevant to a locked room. The debts linking Reggie and Prescott. The hidden passage allowing slips to the village post. The additional poisonings. Elsie's arsenic, Langford's cyanide, distractions to muddy waters. He turned to the motives, pacing slowly. Reggie, drowning in debt, heir presumptive. Cut from the will? Motive strong, alibi cracked. Evelyn, belittled, underpaid, seeking inheritance or revenge. Blackwell, humiliated, loyalty a facade. Prescott, blackmailed over his error, silence via death. Green, discarded lover, bitterness festering. Langford, defeated rival, vengeance sweet. A murmur rippled. Reggie protested, "This is torture!" Poirot raised a hand. "Patience." Now, the twists. Blackwell mailed a warning letter, non-poisoned, to urge fairness, confessed. But others? Varied tones suggest multiple hands? No. One mastermind, adapting. The digitalis in her evening tea, weakening her for the cyanide's swift kill. Who prepared? Evelyn added sugar, Blackwell served, Prescott prescribed. The sugar bowl tainted. But selectively? Poirot stopped before Prescott, his gaze piercing. "Ah, doctor, your bag holds cyanide traces. Medical, you claim. Proxy." Prescott bolted up. "Lies!" But Poirot continued relentlessly. The twist, the first letters non-toxic, building fear. The fatal one, cyanide crystals dissolving on moisture. You, doctor, supplied digitalis the night before, in her medicine, not tea, ensuring weakness. She locked herself in, safe she thought, but doom posted. "Why me?" Prescott bellowed. Poirot smiled coldly. "Motive? Lady Fairchild's hold over your malpractice, not accident, but deliberate. Diaries hint you hastened Lord Fairchild's death for her, a pact gone sour. She blackmailed you endlessly. Silence her, free yourself. Debts from Reggie? Bonus. Land with Langford? Opportunity. Evidence mounted. Your prescription ledger, cyanide ordered excess. Your gloves, smudged with ink and residue, found in your bag. Elsie's poisoning? Arsenic from your kit, to silence her overhearing your plot with Evelyn. Langford's wine? You poured her glass, fearing she suspected your deals. Evelyn sobbed, confessing. He forced me, promised money for mother. I typed, but no poison. Poirot nodded sympathetically. Accomplice, but not killer. The mastermind? Dr. Lionel Prescott. Prescott lunged, but Hargreaves restrained him. Proof? He snarled. Poirot produced a telegram. London chemist confirms. Your unique compound trace on the letter. Digitalis mixed with cyanide. Your signature brew. The room erupted. Relief. Shock. Reggie exhaled. Green grinned bitterly. Langford arched a brow. Blackwell remained stoic. Langford murmured, "Clever devil." Poirot concluded, "The impossible crime? Simple. Death delivered by post. Prepared within. Motive, method, opportunity, all align. Justice now prevails." As Prescott was led away cursing, the manor exhaled. The revelation, logical and satisfying, lifted the veil, exposing the heart's darkness. Chapter 7. Justice Served. In the wake of Hercule Poirot's stunning revelation, Fairchild Manor seemed to exhale a collective breath it had held for days, the tension that had gripped its halls like a vice finally loosening, though not without the lingering echoes of shock and betrayal. The drawing room, with its crackling fire and the faint scent of wood smoke mingling with the musty aroma of old velvet, became the stage more, his eyes, sharp and compassionate in equal measure, sweeping over the group. "Mes amis," he said, his voice steady and resonant, carrying the warmth of resolution. "The puzzle is complete. The grey cells have triumphed, and justice, she will be served. But let us tie the loose threads, for a mystery unravelled must leave no doubts." He began with the mechanics of the crime, pacing slowly before the mantel, as if lecturing at a salon. The letters, they were the instrument of terror and death, typed by Mademoiselle Hargrove on her machine, using knowledge gleaned from the diaries she perused in moments of weakness. But the poison, the cyanide crystals applied to the adhesive flaps with a fine brush, was the work of Dr. Prescott. He, with his medical access, procured the toxin, disguising it in compounds. The flaps, when moistened by Lady Fairchild's habitual finger-licking, a detail from her own writings, delivered the fatal dose. Simple, elegant, deadly. Reggie Fairchild, leaning forward in his armchair, his face a mask, a stand of stunned relief, interjected hoarsely. "But why involve Evelyn and the digitalis?" Poirot nodded approvingly at the question, as if encouraging a pupil. "Ah, the complications. The doctor, he coerced Mademoiselle Hargrove with promises of aid for her ailing mother, debts he himself could forgive as her physician. She typed the letters, mailed some via the hidden passage to avoid suspicion, believing them mere threats to scare Lady Fairchild into benevolence. But Prescott escalated. The evening before, during his routine visit, he laced her medicinal tonic with digitalis, not enough to kill, but to weaken her heart, ensuring the cyanide's swift victory the next morning. The locked room? A perfect alibi for the method, death by post, no intruder needed. Evelyn, her sobs subsiding into hiccups, lifted her head. "I didn't know about the poison. He said it was just to make her reflect on her cruelties." Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Oui, mademoiselle. You are the pawn, not the queen. Your remorse speaks volumes. The law will consider this." Prescott, his face flushed and twisted, snarled from his restraints. "My greenhouse. You planted it, didn't you? To throw suspicion my way." Prescott's eyes darted, but he said nothing. Blackwell, the butler, nodded grimly. "And the arsenic in Elsie's tea, you're doing, to silence her after she overheard you pressuring Evelyn." Lady Langford, fanning herself with renewed vigour, added archly, "And my wine last night. You feared I'd uncover your shady land schemes with me. Prescott's shoulders sagged, defeat etching lines deeper into his face. She drove me to it, holding that old mistake over me like a noose. Reginald's death was an error, but she twisted it, demanded favours, silence. I couldn't take it anymore. Inspector Hargreaves stepped forward, his walrus moustache bristling with official zeal. Dr. Lionel Prescott, you're under arrest for the murder of Lady Arabella Fairchild, attempted murder of Lady Victoria Langford, and Elsie the maid, and conspiracy. Miss Hargrove, you'll come with us for questioning. Accessory charges likely, but cooperation may lighten your burden. The constable handcuffed Prescott, who offered no resistance, his boom of a laugh now a hollow echo. Evelyn rose shakily, supported by Elsie, who had recovered enough to offer a sympathetic arm. As they were led away, the manor seemed to brighten, the shadows retreating. Reggie stood, extending a hand to Poirot. Monsieur, we owe you everything. Aunt Arabella was a tyrant, but she didn't deserve this. Poirot shook it firmly. Justice is blind to character, monsieur, but perhaps her passing teaches us all. Kindness costs nothing. Green clapped Blackwell on the back, old grudges forgotten in the catharsis. Never thought it'd be the doc, sly one. Langford, rising gracefully, inclined her head. Impressive, detective. The county will sing your praises. Poirot demurred with a bow. Poirot is but the instrument of logic. The grey cells, they do the work. He gathered his notes, preparing to depart, but paused at the door. One final word. The will. It stands as last revised. Reggie inherits the bulk, with bequests to staff, including Evelyn should mercy prevail. Use it wisely, all of you. Secrets poison more than cyanide. By evening, as Poirot boarded the train back to London, Fairchild Manor receded into the twilight, its lights twinkling like stars emerging company in a state of stunned silence that gradually gave way to a cacophony of emotions, relief, outrage, sorrow, and a profound sense of closure. It was the afternoon of October 18th, 1925, and the sun, having broken through the morning's clouds, now bathed the room in a warm, golden light that contrasted sharply with the darkness of the deeds just exposed. The fire in the grate crackled merrily, its flames dancing as if celebrating the triumph of truth over deception. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his impeccably waxed moustache and piercing eyes, stood at the centre of it all, his presence a beacon of unassailable logic amid the turmoil. Dr. Lionel Prescott, the portly physician whose jovial exterior had masked a heart poisoned by resentment and fear, was now a broken man. Restrained by Inspector Hargreaves' firm grip on one arm and the constable's on the other, he slumped against the mantel, his round face ashen, his spectacles slipping down his sweat-slicked nose. Beside him, Miss Evelyn Hargrove, the timid secretary whose loyalty had been twisted into complicity, dissolved into quiet sobs, her spectacles fogged with tears, her hands clutching a sodden handkerchief as if it were her last anchor to decency. The other suspects, Reggie Fairchild, Mr. Thomas Blackwell, Mr. Silas Green, and Lady Victoria Langford, sat in a semicircle of high-backed chairs, their expressions a tapestry of reactions. Reggie's wide-eyed astonishment, Blackwell's stoic nod of acceptance, Green's grim satisfaction, and Langford's arched eyebrow of intrigued approval. Poirot, ever the consummate showman in the service of justice, cleared his throat softly, drawing all eyes back to him. "Mesdames et messieurs," he intoned, his voice warm yet authoritative, laced with that distinctive Belgian accent that rolled like a gentle wave over pebbles. The curtain falls on this tragedy, but not without a full accounting. Poirot does not leave loose ends. The grey cells demand completeness. Let us revisit the path to this moment, that you may see the elegance and the horror of the crime. He began with the genesis of the plot, pacing the Persian rug with measured steps, his silver-headed cane tapping rhythmically like a metronome of deduction. It started with a sequence sympathetically, though his eyes remained steely. "Oui, doctor. Desperation breeds darkness. You conceived the letters as psychological warfare, anonymous threats to unnerve her, perhaps drive her to relent. But when she grew bolder, confronting you, the plan evolved to murder." Turning to Evelyn, Poirot's tone softened. "Mademoiselle Hargrove, your part was born of vulnerability. Your mother's illnesses, the meagre salary, Prescott, as her doctor, knew your plight. He promised relief, funds, treatments in exchange for aid. You, with access to the diaries hidden under the study floorboards, supplied the secrets. You typed the letters on your machine, the font a perfect match, believing them harmless pranks to humble your employer. Evelyn's sobs intensified. I hated her cruelties, the belittling, but murder? Never. He said they'd make her kinder, perhaps increase my bequest. The room stirred. Reggie leaned forward, his dashing features contorted in confusion. But the poison, how did he ensure it worked in that locked room? Poirot smiled faintly, twirling his moustache. Ah, the impossibility unravelled. The cyanide, procured from your medical supplies doctor, was applied as crystals to the envelope flaps. Odourless, invisible until dissolved by moisture. Lady Fairchild's habit, noted in her diaries, of licking her finger to open stubborn seals, sealed her fate. The letters posted from the village, by you, via the hidden passage from the butler's pantry to the stables. Your bicycle a swift steed. No need for entry. Death arrived by royal mail. Green, the gardener, grunted from his seat, his calloused hands clenched. And the vial in my greenhouse? The soil on the envelope? Poirot inclined his head. Red herrings, planted to divert. You, Monsieur Green, with your grudge from the affair, were an easy target. The footprint outside the window, your boot, yes, but irrelevant to a sealed room. Blackwell, the butler, spoke up, his military bearing unbroken. The additional poisonings. Elsie's tea, Lady Langford's wine, to silence potential witnesses? Poirot confirmed. Précisément. Arsenic from your kit, doctor, in Elsie's cup after she overheard your coercion of Evelyn. Cyanide in sorry. To all of you. The pair was led out, Prescott's footsteps heavy, Evelyn's faltering, toward the waiting police wagon in the driveway, its horses stamping impatiently in the crisp air. With the culprits removed, the manor seemed to breathe easier, the oppressive cloud lifting. Reggie stood, extending a trembling hand to Poirot. Monsieur, you've saved us from suspicion's shadow. Aunt Arabella was harsh, but this... Thank you. Poirot shook it warmly. De rien, monsieur. Use your inheritance wisely. Debts paid, perhaps a steadier path. Green clapped Reggie on the back, his rugged grin emerging. Aye, lad, and no more blaming the help. Blackwell nodded solemnly. The household endures. Langford, rising gracefully, offered Poirot a gloved hand. A masterful display, detective. The county owes you a debt. Perhaps a gala in your honour? Poirot demurred with a bow. Poirot seeks only truth, madam. But a fine tisane would not go amiss. As evening approached, he gathered his valise, bidding farewell at the door. Remember all. Secrets fester like untreated wounds. Speak truth. Live openly. The train to London awaited, carrying him away as the sun dipped, painting the countryside in hues of amber and rose. In the days that followed, Fairchild Manor transformed. Reggie, sobered, settled debts and honoured bequests. Evelyn, granted probation for testimony, cared for her mother with a modest sum. Prescott faced trial, his confession sealing his fate. A life sentence, justice's scales balanced. The estate bloomed anew, free from poisoned letters, a testament to deduction's power. And so, the tale of Lady Fairchild ended, a whisper in the winds of time, unravelled by Hercule Poirot's unerring mind. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Manor. As the train carrying Hercule Poirot chugged away from the station at Ashford-on-Thames, leaving behind the rolling hills and the stately silhouette of Fairchild Manor, etched against the twilight sky, one might have thought the story ended there. A neat resolution, justice meted out, and the players scattering to their fates. But mysteries, especially those woven in the intricate style of human hearts and hidden grudges, rarely conclude without lingering echoes. It was in the weeks and months following the arrest from sleepless nights. The will, read by the family solicitor in the very study where his aunt had met her end, confirmed his inheritance, the manor, the lands, the considerable fortune amassed from colonial ventures, all his, minus modest bequests to the staff and a contested parcel to Lady Langford as a final twist of Arabella's spiteful pen. She couldn't resist one last jab, Reggie muttered to himself, staring at the document as if it were another poisoned letter. But wealth brought burdens. Creditors descended like vultures, their demands echoing Reg's past extravagances at the card tables and racetracks. He sold off a few antique vases and a painting or two to settle the most pressing debts, vowing to reform. "No more folly," he told Blackwell one evening over brandy in the drawing room, the fire casting flickering lights on the portraits of stern ancestors. Blackwell, ever the stoic butler, nodded approvingly. "Wise, sir. The manor needs a steady hand." Yet Reg's resolve was tested when old companions from London arrived, tempting him with tales of high-stakes games. In a moment of clarity, he turned them away, choosing instead to immerse himself in the estate's management, learning crop rotations from Green, reviewing accounts with a new secretary hired from the village. Silas Green, the rugged gardener whose calloused hands had once caressed Lady Fairchild in forbidden passion, found a measure of peace in the soil. The revelation had cleared his name, but the sting of suspicion lingered like thorns in his memory. "Framed me good, that doctor did," he grumbled to his assistant one misty morning, pruning the rose bushes that had bloomed defiantly through the autumn chill. With Reg's blessing, Green expanded the gardens, planting a new orchard as a memorial of sorts, not to Lady Fairchild, but to the life he had rebuilt after her rejection. His estranged wife, hearing of the scandal through village gossip, sent a tentative letter from her new home in Manchester. "Perhaps it's time to mend fences," she wrote. Green, after much pondering under the ancient oaks, replied, and slowly, bridges were rebuilt. The greenhouse, once a site of planted evidence, became a haven for exotic blooms, its glass panes reflecting a man who had emerged from the shadows stronger, if scarred. Mr. Thomas Black gathering for the staff, toasting to new beginnings with pilfered sherry from the cellar. In quiet moments, he polished the silver with renewed vigour, his gloved hands a symbol of restored honour. Lady Victoria Langford, the haughty neighbour whose rivalry had fuelled so much speculation, wasted no time in claiming her victory. The disputed parcel of land, awarded in the will, was annexed to her estate, where she promptly planted a hedge of triumph, tall yews that blocked the view from Fairchild Manor. "Arabella's final concession," she purred to her guests at a lavish tea party, her auburn hair gleaming under crystal chandeliers. Yet, the attempted poisoning of her wine had left a mark. She hired a taster for her meals, as eccentric habit that became the talk of the county. In a surprising turn, she extended an olive branch to Reggie, inviting him to hunt on her grounds. "Let bygones be bygones," she said during a stroll along the riverbank. Reggie, wary but pragmatic, accepted, forging an uneasy alliance that stabilised the local aristocracy. As for Evelyn Hargrove, her fate unfolded in the cold halls of justice. Tried as an accessory, her tearful testimony against Prescott, detailing his coercion and her unwitting role, earned her leniency. A suspended sentence and community service at the village orphanage Lady Fairchild had once patronised. Returning to her mother's cottage, Evelyn found solace in simple pursuits, penning a memoir of her time at the manor, though she changed names to protect the living. "The poison was in the words," she wrote, "but forgiveness heals." Her mother, bolstered by funds from a small bequest and Prescott's forfeited assets, recovered her health, and together they tended a modest garden, far from the grandeur of Fairchild. Dr. Prescott's trial in London was a sensation, splashed across newspapers with headlines like "The Poisoning Physician" and sketches of his portly figure in the dock. Poirot, called as a witness, delivered his testimony with characteristic flair, his grey cells lauded by the judge. Convicted on all counts, Prescott was sentenced to life imprisonment, his booming laugh silenced in the grim confines of Pentonville prison. Whispers persisted. Had he accomplices beyond Evelyn? But investigations yielded nothing, the doctor's web unravelling completely. Back at the manor, life resumed its rhythm. Mysteries ended, but human nature endured. Thus, the poisoned letter's legacy lingered, a reminder that in the quiet countryside, secrets could bloom like weeds, only to be uprooted by truth's unyielding light. Chapter 9. The Unsealed Envelope. In the crisp dawn of a new year, 1926, Fairchild Manor awoke to the gentle symphony of birdsong and the distant lowing of cattle from the neighbouring farms. a far cry from the shadowed hush that had enveloped it in the autumn months prior. The estate, with its grand facade now bathed in the soft light of winter sun, seemed to have shed its mantle of mystery like a tree shedding leaves, revealing a structure resilient and renewed. Reginald Fairchild Jr., or Reggie as he still preferred among friends, stood at the tall sash window of the morning room, a cup of steaming coffee in hand, a modern indulgence he had adopted from American acquaintances, gazing out over the frost-kissed lawns. The events of the previous October felt like a distant nightmare, the poisoned letters a faded inkblot on the pages of family history. Yet, as with all deep wounds, scars remained, and sometimes they itched. Reggie had thrown himself into the role of Lord of the Manor with unexpected vigour. Gone were the late nights at London clubs. In their place were early mornings reviewing ledgers with the estate manager, a stern Scotsman named McTavish, who had been hired to bring order to the finances Lady Fairchild had guarded so jealously. "We're turning a profit on the orchards this year, sir," McTavish reported one frosty morning, his breath visible in the chill air of the study, now transformed into a bright office with fresh wallpaper and open curtains. Reggie nodded, a sense of accomplishment warming him more than the roaring fire. He had even begun courting a local debutante, Miss Amelia Thornton, whose lively spirit and kind eyes promised a future untainted by the past's poisons. The household staff, too, had found equilibrium. Blackwell, the unflappable butler, had been promoted to estate steward, his military precision now applied to overseeing the entire operation. "Sir, the renovations to the guest wing are complete," he announced one day, his gloved hands presenting a set of keys with ceremonial flair. Elsie, the maid whose brush with arsenic had left her wary of unfamiliar teas, had blossomed into a confident young woman. "Spin in her grave," Langford quipped one evening over sherry, her laugh tinkling like crystal. Reggie smiled. Perhaps that's the point. Evelyn Hargrove's path had been rockier. After her lenient sentence, she had retreated to her mother's cottage, where the two women lived quietly, supported by the bequest and Evelyn's budding career as a typist for the village solicitor. Her memoir, published anonymously in a London literary magazine, caused a minor stir. The Shadows of Service, it was titled, a veiled account of life under a tyrannical mistress. "It's cathartic," she confided to Reggie during a chance meeting at the market, "but I've no wish to reopen wounds." Reggie, forgiving, offered her a reference should she seek grander employ. Yet, amid this budding renewal, an unexpected echo from the past surfaced. It began on a blustery January afternoon when Reggie, sorting through a forgotten drawer in the library, discovered an unsealed envelope tucked behind a stack of old ledgers. The paper was aged, yellowed at the edges, and bore his aunt's elegant script, "To be opened only in the event of my untimely death." His heart skipped. The handwriting matched the diaries Poirot had unearthed. Curiosity warred with dread as he slit the seal with a letter opener, the same pearl-handled one Lady Fairchild had used. Inside was a single sheet, dated mere days before her demise. "My dear Reginald," it began, "if you read this, my suspicions have proven fatal. The letters are no prank. They stem from within. I have my theories, Prescott's desperation, Evelyn's quiet rage, but proof eludes. Beware the doctor. His hands, meant to heal, have dealt death before. The diaries hold the keys. Guard them well." Reggie stared, the words blurring. It was as if Arabella reached from the grave, her voice sharp and commanding even in death. Shaken, he summoned Blackwell. "Did you know of this?" The butler examined it, his face impassive. "No, sir, but it aligns with her paranoia in those final weeks." Together they pored over the diaries again, locked in a safe since the investigation. New entries leaped out, hints of Prescott's deeper involvement in Lord Fairchild's death, not error, but mercy-killing at Arabella's behest during a terminal illness. "She begged me." What crime surfaced, but the envelope prompted Reggie to donate to a medical charity in Prescott's name. Ironic justice. Dr. Prescott, from his cell, heard of it through newspapers smuggled by a sympathetic guard. The irony broke him. He confessed fully in a rambling letter to the press, detailing the pact and his dissent. "I was her instrument, then her victim." The scandal reignited briefly, but public interest waned, the roaring 20s demanding fresher dramas. Evelyn, reading the accounts, found closure. It explains her cruelty, she wrote in her journal. Fear bred tyranny. She visited the manor one last time, laying flowers on Arabella's grave in the family plot, a quiet forgiveness. As spring approached, Fairchild Manor bloomed. Reggie proposed to Amelia under the budding oaks, the estate alive with promise. The unsealed envelope, filed away, became a family legend, a reminder that secrets, like letters, could resurface, but truth endured. In London, Poirot sipped tisane, smiling at the resolution. The grey cells rest, but the heart remembers. The poisoned letters faded into law, the manor standing eternal, its echoes silenced at last. Wait, that's short. Need 1500. Expand, add more details, subplots, descriptions. Chapter 9. The Unsealed Envelope. The winter of 1926 draped Fairchild Manor in a blanket of crisp frost and quiet introspection, the kind that follows a storm when the world seems to pause, assessing the damage before renewal. It was January, and the English countryside lay under a thin veil of snow, the ancient oaks standing sentinel like frozen guardians, their branches etched against a pale sky. Inside the manor, the air carried the comforting scents of beeswax polish and wood smoke from the ever-burning fires, a far cry from the stifling atmosphere of suspicion that had pervaded the previous autumn. Reginald Fairchild, Jr., Reggie to those who knew his roguish past, had embraced his inheritance with a determination that surprised even himself. No longer the prodigal nephew chasing thrills in London's smoke-filled clubs, he now rose with the dawn, his days filled with the practicalities of estate management. The morning room, with its tall windows overlooking the manicured lawn, Reggie nodded, a sense of pride swelling. The disputed land, ceded to Lady Langford in the will, had been a blow, but he had negotiated a water rights agreement, turning loss into mutual gain. The household had adapted with remarkable resilience. Mr. Thomas Blackwell, the butler whose stoic facade had cracked only briefly during the investigation, now served as estate steward. His military precision extended to every corner. Inventories tallied, staff rotations optimized, even the silverware gleaming brighter than before. "Sir," Blackwell said one evening, entering the library where Reggie pored over maps. "The guest wing renovations are complete. New wallpaper, floral, as you requested, and modern plumbing." Reggie looked up, grinning. "Excellent, Blackwell. You've earned that raise. How's the family?" Blackwell's eyes softened fractionally. "My niece visits next week. The manor feels alive again." Silas Green, the head gardener, had thrown himself into his work with renewed passion. The greenhouse, once a site of framed evidence with that damning vial of cyanide, now burst with colour. Exotic orchids imported from Kew Gardens, rows of vibrant tulips forcing early blooms under glass. "Soil don't lie," Green muttered to his young apprentice one chilly morning, his calloused hands delving into rich earth. "It gives back what you put in." His reconciliation with his wife had been tentative at first. A letter, a visit, then the child's laughter echoing through his cottage. Reggie had granted him extra land for a personal plot, where Green planted roses in memory of lost years. "No more grudges," he confided to Blackwell over ale in the village pub. "Life's too short for poison, literal or otherwise." Young Elsie, the maid whose encounter with arsenic-laced tea had left her with a lingering distrust of unfamiliar beverages, had transformed her fear into fortitude. Now married to Tom the farmer, she lived in a cosy thatched cottage on the estate's edge, but often visited to help with events. "Miss Amelia's a gem," she told Reggie during one such visit, referring to his fiancée, Miss Amelia Thornton, a spirited young woman with golden curls and a laugh like summer rain. Amelia had become a fixture at the manor, organising teas and hunts that drew the county's elite. Install locks on her wine cellar and hire a personal taster, a quirk that amused the locals. Evelyn Hargrove's life had taken a quieter turn. After her probation, she and her mother resided in their modest cottage, the air filled with the clack of her typewriter as she worked for the village solicitor. Her anonymous memoir, Shadows of Service, had sold modestly, its veiled critiques of upper-class tyranny sparking debates in literary circles. "It's not revenge," she explained to her mother over tea one afternoon, the fire crackling in their hearth. "It's release." A small bequest from the will had funded her mother's treatments, and Evelyn found peace in anonymity, occasionally sending Reggie updates on her well-being. "Forgiveness is a balm," one note read. Yet the past was not entirely interred. It resurfaced one blustery afternoon when Reggie, clearing a cluttered drawer in the library, a room now lined with new bookshelves and comfortable armchairs, stumbled upon an unsealed envelope. Tucked behind dusty ledgers, it bore Lady Fairchild's unmistakable script. "To be opened only in the event of my untimely death, for Reginald's eyes alone." His pulse quickened. The paper was thick, the ink faded but legible. With trembling hands he broke the wax seal, the crack echoing like a gunshot in the quiet room. The letter unfolded revelations. "My dear nephew," it began in Arabella's precise hand, "if fate has claimed me prematurely, know that the anonymous threats are no jest. They emanate from within our circle, laced with knowledge only interests possess. I suspect Prescott foremost. His hands, meant for healing, carry the stain of my husband's end. Not accident, but a mercy I requested in desperation during Reginald's agony. He obliged, but guilt festers, and my hold over him tightens like a noose. Evelyn too harbours resentment. Her eyes betray her when she thinks I don't see. The diaries, guard them, they are my armour and my confession. If I fall, seek the Belgian, Poirot. His mind pierces veils. Yours in caution, Arabella." Reggie sank into a chair, the paper crumpling in his grip. It confirmed Poirot's deductions but added layers. Arabella's complicity in her husband's death, a euthanasia pact twisted into blackmail. She orchestrated her own torment. Context. No action needed. The reply. "Share Reggie. Echoes fade. Burn it if it haunts. Live forward. H.P." Reggie did neither, filing it with the diaries as a family cautionary tale. Dr. Prescott in prison learned via smuggled papers. The exposure broke his spirit. He penned a full confession detailing the pact and his spiral. Mercy became murder. Published, it closed the chapter definitively. Spring arrived, the manor blooming. Reggie's wedding to Amelia filled the grounds with joy, guests toasting under blossoming trees. The unsealed envelope became legend, a reminder that truths, like letters, could liberate or bind. Fairchild Manor endured, its echoes transformed into whispers of hope. Chapter 10. Shadows No More. The passage of time at Fairchild Manor had a way of softening even the sharpest edges of tragedy, much like the gentle erosion of wind and rain on the estate's ancient stone walls. It was the summer of 1927, nearly 2 years since the poisoned letters had unravelled the web of secrets and deceit that had ensnared Lady Arabella Fairchild and her circle. The English countryside was in full bloom, the rolling hills alive with the vibrant greens of meadows and the golden splashes of wildflowers. The manor itself stood proud under a cloudless sky, its ivy-clad facade gleaming in the sunlight, the chimneys puffing lazy trails of smoke from the kitchens, where preparations for a grand garden party were underway. Reggie Fairchild, the once wayward nephew, now a pillar of stability, had revived the tradition of summer fêtes, not as ostentatious displays of wealth, but as genuine celebrations of community and renewal. The lawns were dotted with striped marquees, tables laden with silver platters of scones, clotted cream, strawberries, and pitchers of iced lemonade. Guests from the village and neighbouring estates mingled in linen suits and floral dresses, their laughter mingling with the strains of a string quartet playing light waltzes under the shade of the ancient oaks. Children chased butterflies, their giggles a joyful counterpoint to the manor's sombre history. Reggie, dressed in a crisp white shirt and trousers, stood at the centre of it all, his arm linked with Amelia's. His wife, the former Miss Thornton, looked radiant in a pale blue gown that matched the sky, her golden curls adorned. "Yields up 20%. Reggie nodded, pride evident. "Good man. And the tenants? Are they joining?" McTavish grinned. "Aye, with their families. No more divides here." Blackwell, the steadfast butler promoted to steward, orchestrated the event with his usual precision. His military bearing was softened by a rare smile as he directed footmen with trays of refreshments. "Sir, the champagne is chilling perfectly," he reported, his gloved hands adjusting a floral arrangement. Reggie clapped him on the shoulder. "Couldn't do it without you, Blackwell. How's the niece?" Blackwell's eyes warmed. "Thriving, sir. She's starting school in the village, thanks to your scholarship fund." It was one of Reggie's initiatives, born from the lessons of the poisoning, education and opportunity to prevent resentments from festering. Silas Green, the gardener whose rough hands had once been suspected of deadly deeds, tended a display of prize roses near the marquee. His family, wife and child, assisted, the boy proudly showing off a bloom to guests. "These are hybrids," Green explained gruffly to a cluster of admirers. "Took years, but worth it." His reconciliation had been complete. The cottage buzzed with domestic bliss, a far cry from the lonely years after the affair. Spotting Reggie, he tipped his cap. "Party's a hit, sir. Reminds me, no pests this year, thanks to natural remedies. No more poisons here." Lady Victoria Langford arrived in style, her Rolls-Royce purring up the drive, chauffeured by a uniformed driver. Stepping out in a swirl of silk and feathers, she air-kissed Amelia. "Darlings, what a splendid affair. The Academy sends its regards, enrolment's booming." Her riding school on the annexed land had become a county staple, but the cane she carried, a silver-topped accessory, hinted at lingering caution from her near-fatal sip of wine. "Still taste testing?" Reggie teased gently. Langford laughed, a tinkling sound. "Old habits, dear boy, but life's too short for grudges." Evelyn Hargrove, invited as a gesture of forgiveness, arrived quietly by carriage. Her mousy hair was now styled neatly, her dress simple but elegant. "Mr. Fairchild," she said, curtsying. "Thank you." Sun-drenched conservatory filled with potted palms, the hidden passage sealed with brickwork adorned by climbing vines. "The manor has healed," he observed, his cane tapping the gravel path. Amelia, intrigued, asked, "Do cases like this linger with you, monsieur?" Poirot twirled his moustache. "Always, madame. The human puzzle fascinates. Here, motives intertwined like your ivy. Greed, resentment, fear." They paused by Green's roses. "Monsieur Green, your garden blooms as your spirit does." Green nodded gruffly. "Thanks to you clearing my name. No more shadows." Inside for tea, the group reconvened in the drawing room, sunlight streaming through windows once shrouded in dread. Conversation flowed. Blackwell shared staff anecdotes. Elsie, with toddler in tow, recounted her happy marriage. Langford boasted of equestrian triumphs. Evelyn spoke softly of her work. Then Reggie raised the unsealed envelope from the prior year. "It stirred things, monsieur." Prescott's full confession followed, the pact exposed. Poirot nodded sagely. "Oui." Lady Fairchild's request for mercy on her husband was no act of love, but calculation. Inheritance secured. Prescott, bound by guilt, became her tool, then victim. Langford leaned forward. "My lawyers found corroborating documents. Financial strains pre-death." Evelyn paled. "She knew my resentment. Used it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The diaries held codes, the envelope her insurance. But now, all is light." Reggie fetched the safe's remnants. "One last review?" Poirot perused, confirming. "No loose ends. Burn them. Let go." That evening, as guests departed amid fireworks, Reggie consigned the papers to the conservatory fire, flames dancing like liberated spirits. Amelia hugged him. "Our chapter begins." Poirot, departing, whispered, "Bravo, the grey cells approve." Months later, a letter. Prescott's death in prison, peaceful. The manor thrived. Reggie's family grew. Alliances strengthened. Shadows no more. Fairchild Manor stood eternal, a beacon of resilience.